2019 regular meeting of the Kent Board of Selectmen to order at 4:30 p.m. at the Kent Town Hall, and ask everybody to please stand and join us as we salute the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Remind everybody that our meetings for the past couple of years have been streamed live via YouTube, and this is no exception, so be aware of the fact that you are on the air, and I would also ask that you speak up when you do speak from far. The camera's facing this way, so you don't have to worry about being on camera, but your voice will be. I'd like to add one item to the agenda, 5D, simply policy and procedure manual per Jeff's request, which is left off. Do you guys have anything that you want to add? Go ahead. And moving to approval of minutes. Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of April 2nd, 2019. I would move that those minutes be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then the two special meetings which we're dealing with, I believe, town meetings and agendas. I would move to approve those, the 17th and the 23rd of April, both together.
Second that.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Okay. Is there any oral communication that's not already on this agenda? There are none. We'll go to the one piece of written communication, and that is the fairly comprehensive report from Donna Hayes, Land Use Administrator, Building Department, Planning and Zoning, Inland Wetlands, Zoning Board of Appeals, Architectural Review Board, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Donna's not here. She's starting, I believe, her first day of vacation tomorrow. And, any questions, though, on the report? Okay. Okay, we welcome back an old friend. Mr. Sinkowitz is here to talk with us about, are you going to do both of these, Jeff, the sewer ordinances and the sewer lease financing?
Yes, they're both gonna be discussed, yeah.
Yeah,
So you're doing them.
she's gonna do the lease financing, I'm gonna just hold her hand.
We have in our packages two fairly thick stacks of documents. One, the first page is entitled Allingham, Reddy, Hoff, and Henry, and the other one is entitled MLC Municipal Leasing Consultants. Note the note on the, I assume you're gonna do the ordinances first, Jeff?
Yeah, sure.
The note, the first 14 pages are the current ordinances, and the 5 pages are the proposed ordinances. And the sewer commission, along with Jeff, who is their attorney, have been working on these for quite some time, and so we'll turn it over to you, Jeff.
You want me to come forward?
Come on up and
Okay.
have a seat if you like, or stand if you prefer.
I'll sit down.
Okay?
Can I just see what you have in front of you?
Yep.
I'm not, so I know I'm talking to the same
That's what
issues.
all three of us have in front of us concerning the ordinances.
Okay. Basically, your current ordinance is I would have to say it's substantially out of date. It probably originated as a model ordinance that was provided to the town by the Department of Environmental Protection, probably back in the 60s or 70s, early 70s. And I think there was 1 or 2 amendments, but it's essentially what was the original model ordinance.
When the sewer
When the
plant was constructed?
Well, the plant was constructed before my time, but either when it was constructed or when it came under the regulation of the DEP. In the 60s, that was the big push to have, to regulate the separate water from sewer in the pipes and to regulate the sewage discharges. So it probably dates back to the sixties. So the sewer commission, or the sewer ordinance is way out of date. There's been a lot of, policy directives that have come down from the DEP or the DEEP now, which are not reflected in the ordinance. The ordinance really, doesn't provide what I would feel is the authority that the sewer commission needs to effectively operate their system in terms of dealing with recalcitrant customers and whatnot, who don't pay their bills, or who violate the regulations. And quite a few years ago, John Casey asked me to update it. And I said to him at that time, I said, what you really need to do is and there's a lot of stuff in your regulation, in your ordinance that really are regulatory in nature. I said, I think you need to split this up. You need an ordinance that's an enabling legislation, or an enabling action for the sewer commission, and you need regulations. And the reason I say that is because to change the ordinance, you gotta come to the selectmen, you gotta go to town meeting. It's very onerous, very cumbersome process to do it. Whereas to change the regulations, to be honest with you, the statutes don't even specify how the sewer commission should adopt regulations, but basically my practice is, if it's a substantive change, you do public notice and a hearing and go that route. So John said, no, I don't, it's gonna be too much for the town to absorb, amend the ordinance, do an amendment to the ordinance. So it took me over a year to do it. And I put together a fairly major amendment to the ordinance. And I think at that time, the sewer commission got distracted by some other issues. One was this Maple Street extension. I think there was another project out here where the pipes were failing, and so they had some major headaches and had to do some construction, and that fell by the wayside. Probably about a year ago, I'm not sure if John or Alyssa, somebody asked me about, oh gosh, we need to do something about our ordinance, and I said, well geez, I got this document from, I think it was 2012 or 2013, do you wanna use this? And I sent that document out, and you know, but that was an ordinance. I still feel that they're best served by having a separate ordinance and regulations. And so what I wanna do, or what I'm advocating to them and to you, is that you kind of give me the go-ahead to draft them. Now, I'm just trying to see what this is here.
But quick question.
Yeah,
The note here
yeah,
says that the ordinance
Yeah.
is 14 pages,
yeah.
and the new proposed ordinance is 5. Does that mean that 14's been reduced to 5?
Well, nothing's happened yet, okay, I mean, cause we're kind of in limbo here.
Okay, so what is this in reference to?
I'm trying to see.
Bruce, the 14 become
Ooh, this is-
the regulations. The other,
Oh, the
the
14.
first 5 are the ordinances, and then the bulk of the rest of the material in the document becomes the regulations,
Okay,
of which
okay,
then those are
alright.
going to get amended as we go
Yeah,
forward.
I think since December, so what I wanna do is I wanna split it. I want to, number one, enhance the ordinance to, for example, I think the fines are still $99, the statute now says you can have a $250 a day fine. One of the things that I found very effective with sewer commissions is, orders to show cause if people are violating their regulations. You know, you don't wanna go to court. The quickest way of getting compliance with your regulations or with your ordinance, if we go that route, is an order to show cause. I wanna put that in the ordinance so that they have some authority to do that. I represent two other commissions now, and I've represented them all for, over, many years, over 20 years probably. And we've gone that route. We've got a book of regulations and a relatively short ordinance that says it shall be a sewer commission or water pollution control, it shall consist of 5 members and 2 alternates, they shall be elected, they shall have the following powers that are set forth in the general statutes, so, sort of that's all in there now. But then your ordinance goes on to defining, you know, what a slug is and what a building sewer is and setting parameters for industrial discharges, which doesn't need to be in an ordinance, that can be in the regulations. So I think the guidance that I'm trying to get, because it's a huge amount of work to do it, and I don't wanna waste, just do it for nothing. The guidance that I think I'm trying to get, and the sewer commission is trying to get at this point, is would you accept that concept of having the ordinance and having the regulations? Now, what I did, I think after December 6th, I'll give you that back, Bruce, because I'm gonna confuse myself. All right. After December 6th, apparently in late January, I guess I must have done it, of this year, I actually took what is the existing ordinance. Back up a little bit. We have an existing ordinance, then we have an amendment to the existing ordinance that I did several years ago, that's never been considered or adopted. I think the only ones who've really seen that, maybe Bruce has seen it, but generally just the sewer commission. So then, when the commission said, oh geez, we'd rather follow your advice and go with a separate set of regulations. Then what I did was I took the existing ordinance that's presently on your books, and I whittled it down to what I think it should look like, at least in January when I did it. It was still a work in progress. So I have those documents if you wanted to see what that would look like. Okay, but maybe that's what Bruce has, although.
Yes.
Well, that's what.
They all have it, they have the two.
They have the one that says
Yes.
2019 1-25 clean
Yep.
amendments? Do they have that?
That's-
They have that?
That's the second portion that you're talking about, Bruce, that's the last 5 pages.
The one that says chapter 15 sewers and sewage.
Yeah, but in the upper
disposal.
right-hand corner, it says, it
On
should
the
say
top.
2019
Yeah.
125.
Yeah,
Okay, that's what I envision the ordinance looking like. If
So this would be the ordinance.
This is the ordinance.
this would become the ordinance,
And
yeah.
the
All the way
proposed
back.
regulations
Last 5
in the
pages.
first
I
section.
don't see 2000.
No, I think the proposed regulations would be something different. I haven't, what I
I
haven't,
haven't finished that part.
right, what I haven't done was, I haven't taken what was my work product from 2012 and brought that into a set of regulations. But basically, the benefit of the regulations for the sewer commission is it gives them flexibility in dealing with the problems that come up that didn't have, the problems that occur today, grease traps. There's a whole set of state regulations like grease traps that should be incorporated into your ordinance or into your regulations.
May I stop
Yeah.
you? And because they're not there, are they not enforceable?
Well, it becomes an issue, it becomes a question mark. I
Why
think,
wouldn't they be if the state regulations, why wouldn't they apply?
well, the state, the question becomes one of the state looks to the town to enforce it all, and then the town needs to have, it's a lot easier if they're enforcing their own regulations than the state regulations, a lot cleaner. Now, apparently, even though there are these regulations, the grease traps aren't the big problem they are in some other towns. I mean, they're a huge problem. There was some guy, I'm not sure where he came from, he's just opened up a restaurant in Brookfield, he went to jail for just dumping grease in he actually went to jail for quite some time, maybe 10 months, for discharging grease illegally, yeah.
What are you in for? Grease?
But there's a whole host of other issues. I would have, for example, I would anticipate that the regulations would be a guide for the WPC, or for the sewer commission in its day-to-day activities. They wanna do a benefit assessment, there'll be a section there on how to do it.
Let me ask you a question. It sounds like there's no reason not to do this immediately, but what would be the process for amending the regulations? Would that be totally within the sewer commission?
Yes,
or-
yeah. That,
Okay,
yes.
And to me, that would be really my only concern, is the sewer commission would now have some autonomy to change things.
Well, they probably.
They will.
They will, but do you wanna be running the sewer operations?
No, but a nice, to have a check on it would be smart.
The statute now, as it now exists, is, to be honest with you, designed to keep the politicians out of the sewer department. I mean, theoretically, it is, and it does give the sewer authority, they do have the statutory authority to adopt regulations. But the problem was, if you adopt regulations, now, if they were to adopt just a skeleton set of regulations, right now, and then if there's any inconsistency with the ordinance, then you got a problem. For example, they wanted, one of the first things I think I would do is, we have an application process for the sewer, in the regulations. There's no real application process in the ordinance, if I recall it correctly.
Application to become a user?
To become a user, to connect, or to construct, or do a sewer extension. For example, at one point, well, we've done sewer extensions here for private citizens, and I was the attorney. And, there was nothing on the books to deal with it, and we kind of, I had some experience from other projects in other towns, and so I basically told the sewer commission and the town, follow those procedures. But we got developers to pay for some sewer extensions that, unless I open up my mouth, the town's gonna be paying for it. So there are some things we could put in regulations that would give the, it's basically a procedures manual for the sewer department. And, but if in fact, they have a problem, they have a problem, let's say with, there's too much septic coming into town, I don't know if that's a problem or not, but, and they wanna regulate, they wanna stop that. Well, there's some ways that they can do it, but if they don't have anything on the books, they're just flying by the seat of their pants, in my opinion. The two other commissions that I'm most familiar with, which was New Milford and Brookfield, and I also did work for, at one time for Bethel. They all operate off of regulations, I'm sure Newtown does. So, that's the way to go. The problem is now you've got an ordinance that's so far out of date that it's really not very useful.
Well, you made that point for.
Yeah.
So,
It's only
again,
50
let me
years old.
make sure I understand. The last 5 pages or so you got here it's what you would propose, at least today, it could change a million times, but today, as a new ordinance.
The one that says.
The last 5 pages, the one that says.
2019,
yeah,
125.
that's the one I'm referring
That's the one. That was my last work
That's
product,
to
yeah.
be the new ordinance.
Yeah, but I wouldn't
This
say.
Well,
Yeah,
just for
okay.
now, just for sake of
Yeah.
discussion, we're gonna be here forever.
Yeah,
The rest of it is the former ordinance.
it's probably the former
Yeah,
ordinance.
it is.
Okay.
And so you have pulled the key things that in your opinion as an attorney belong in a sewer
Right,
ordinance.
right.
And put them in this.
Correct.
And the things that have been left out,
Well, they're either out of date.
the 9 pages that you've reduced it by
Right.
are things that are either out of date or things that belong in regulations, not in an ordinance.
Right, but the regulations will probably be 25 pages long.
Maybe so,
Yeah.
but, so we don't have regulations
No, no.
yet.
No,
That would be, so that's what you're here seeking.
I just want, what I'm really looking for, what I'd like to know is which direction to go. And you guys are the key, because you control, if you say, we want this in all in an ordinance, fine, I guess they'll go with an ordinance. But if you're saying, no, we can live with the idea that the sewer commission has regulations, just like every other land use agency has regulations, then I can prepare the regulations for them. Okay?
Yeah.
But it's a lot of work to do, and if it's gonna be dead on arrival to you, then no sense doing it.
Right.
Okay? I would not ask you to proceed on this at this
Oh,
point.
no, I know you're not asking
Okay,
procedure.
I would just say, if this conceptually works for you, what I would then do is I'd develop the regulations and present it all at the same time and it's a complete package. And if you don't wanna go the regulation route, I'm not sure what the sewer commission would do, but then you still gotta update your ordinance, and you gotta put all that new stuff in that belongs there,
The regulatory.
Well, the whole, it just, there's a lot of just day-to-day stuff that belongs there. For example, who makes the decision? I can't remember if your ordinance says if the sewer line goes by your property, you're entitled to connect. That's what the old model ordinance said, and the problem is, if there's no capacity or the pipes aren't sufficient, they just can't automatically connect. The commission has to have some authority, some discretion in those, and so there's all kinds of examples like that that are potential, and, the town would be better served if they had updated regulations that can be continually updated as the problems continue, arise.
Right, the ordinance sticks it in time as opposed to making it a lifelong.
Right. And the ordinance basically establishes the commission, says how you're gonna fill the commission with members, what the powers are, which basically says you got the state powers, the state gives you, and what the penalties are if you violate the rules and regulations, or if you violate the ordinance. That's basically what it says. And I don't think the ordinance needs to be any more than that. But they need to have better, they need regulations just to have an operating procedures manual, so to speak. It's not really exactly the same, but it describes how the sewer system would be utilized by the townspeople. And I don't think there's anything you're gonna find objectionable in the regulations, to be honest with you. You use an application, you gotta file an application form, you gotta pay an application fee, you gotta, if it requires engineering, you gotta pay for the engineering, I don't know how, it's gotta, the discharges have to meet a certain standard, and you can't put for example, you can't put rainwater into the sewer, because we're paying, you're paying big bucks to treat rainwater, things like that.
Thoughts? I think it's definitely the way to go.
Yeah, they have to be updated, if the sewer commission believes they need to be updated. Yep.
There is so much stuff missing in them now,
Right.
because things have changed so much that either way, whether it becomes just ordinances or ordinance and regulations, they totally need an overhaul.
Will the ordinance specify a procedure for promulgating the regulations?
If you want me to, I can put that in. I don't know if I have that in here now. But I can put that in if that's something you'd like, yeah. But generally, the procedure would be, the procedure the statute does not describe a procedure. It says that the sewer commission can adopt regulations. What advice I've always given them, all the commissions that have regulations, is have a public hearing, 10 days notice.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
fine,
yeah,
that's the way it should
yeah,
be, but so I would like to see that in the
Okay, all right,
ordinance,
okay.
and then there is a procedure for the regulation.
Okay.
I would agree,
Yeah.
this is gonna be a long process, so I would be of the belief that we should give our blessing to ordinance
Yeah.
and regulations, and then see the end result.
Yeah, is that really what they're asking?
I think that's what you're seeking.
I just wanna know where to spend my time.
That's what you're
Okay,
seeking.
that's what I'm seeking, yeah.
And that is the sewer commission's wish as well, that's the preferred route,
Correct.
correct? Okay. Makes sense to me.
Okay, then I will.
Do we need a motion, or just,
Just to be sure, I move to go with the sewer commission's wishes of having Kent's present sewer ordinance divided up into an ordinance and regulations immediately.
Yeah, okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
So this will come back to you.
Oh, yeah.
I think I already sent this to Randy at one point, just so he had a heads up what was going on, what I was looking to do, okay?
Yeah.
And if there's any issues, I'll take them up with him directly, okay? To be honest with you, I don't wanna speak for him, I think he would agree with this approach.
I think he probably would as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Alyssa, the
That's
other
my
part of
Oh, I'm
yours?
sorry.
Okay, so the other part of the equation here is the sewer plant over the last couple of years has obviously taken a bit of a beating because money has not been, things haven't been kept up with, over the past couple of years. And this past year, we lost a huge piece of equipment called the belt press, which is, I wish I could tell you every problem I have is like a $5,000 problem. They're all like $250,000 and up. So we have looked into a couple of different belt presses and a couple of different types of ways of going about it. We looked into two different companies for a belt press, and we have, 2 weeks ago, another gentleman came through to bring us a piece of equipment. I thought I had it. It's called a, where are we here, sorry. It's a sludge processing, it's not another form of sludge processing. Unfortunately, once we looked into all of that, it became even more expensive than the original cost of the belt press. The problem is that in the budget for the sewer commission, we have a reserve of about $700,000. I think it's not quite that, and if we pull out all that funding to pay for a brand new belt press, it leaves us with less than a year's worth of capital to operate the plant were something to go wrong. So I personally don't want to strip the account just to buy the belt press, because it's going to come out to about $425,000 by the time you buy the piece of equipment, which is, it's about $350,000 for this particular belt press. It's all custom work and stuff like that, but it's really needed. And then by the time you put on a pump house and the electrical, you're looking at somewhere closer to $400,000. So what we did, instead of pulling the money out of the account, we've looked into a couple of options to finance it. So we looked at John Casey looked at a couple of different companies, and having looked it over myself, I think the one company called MLC, which is Municipal Leasing Consultants, is the way to go. We're looking to borrow $350,000, which I think a 10-year plan is, 10-year deal is definitely the way to go. It's going to end up costing us about $59,000 per year to pay for it over 10 years. This way it keeps us with some reserves in the checking account, and at the end of the lease, then the equipment is ours. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. But anyway, I think that is totally the way to go. So what we're looking for is, because we are such a small part of the town and such a small organization compared to other sewer plants around Connecticut and elsewhere, we need to, in order to qualify for this loan, we need to have the town, who has obviously a better rating than the sewer commission, to sign off on the loan for us, or to co-sign the loan. And sewer commission is going to totally pay for it, but we need the town to sign off on the loan so that we can get the loan to buy the belt press. And that's pretty much it.
And these are just two bids.
We
One's
got
a
two
dump
bids on
press, it
leasing.
says, and
We got
dump.
two bids on leasing. One is MLC and one is the one in
Right.
your left hand.
Just the two pieces of equipment just are slightly, one's a dump press and one's a belt press.
Press.
But they're the
And-
same thing in
But the
effect.
dump press that we looked into, that came to us through Jack Nelson, by the time we put it in, it's going to be more expensive than to go with a belt press, because the initial cost on it is somewhere around $400,000, plus installation, plus wiring, all that stuff, and delivery. It doesn't include all the other one includes all of those figures, except for building the pump house where it's gotta go through. So,
Is the service life on both pieces of equipment about the same?
yeah, I think so. The belt press has a service life of probably 25 to 30 years, which is what we've had, which is about what this one has lasted, I guess, pretty close to it. But, and we've looked into different things at the sewer plant. Someone had come in and said, we can totally redo the whole thing and just bring everything up to code, and, you're looking at like a $2 million project, and that's just not where I think we need to head. I think if we can when I sat down with Bart and looked at all the other options, I think if we can, we've been replacing some equipment, we put in, new diffusers down there, that cost us a fortune. But I think if, once we get the belt press back up and running, then the plant is gonna run far more efficiently. And
Do you
we
have a metering
definitely
system
need it.
that
I'm sorry.
measures the input from the customer?
Lyle, who's the sewer plant manager, Lyle Summers, measures everything. And, you know,
No.
I think it was,
No, we don't have a metered system.
oh, no, so, I'm sorry, it's not metered, he
Tracks that.
tracks it, but we don't have, the dump press would have been metered, which would have been great, but the cost on it is, I think, is far outweighs what the value of the other belt press would do.
But this is to reduce the weight of your sludge disposal, right?
Correct.
So there's an operating cost savings at some
Yeah.
level.
The other thing, the dump press would increase the use of lime, like, by fivefold. You know, amongst other things, that, you know, it becomes a more expensive operation even, you know, so we're glad we looked into it, but we honestly feel this one from BDP is definitely the way to go.
But this will, you need this to, otherwise you're paying a fortune to get rid of the
Having
sludge.
it hauled, otherwise we're hauling it away.
Yeah.
So the only issue before us as folks who run the town is whether or not we'll
You would co-sign the law.
co-sign the loan.
Yeah.
Yeah, but don't you have to appropriate the money to do that? I think you do.
Even though we're not actually spending our money.
I think
We're
you
backing it.
I think you have to do an appropriation to, in other words, you can't enter into a contract without an appropriation.
In case the loan should be defaulted upon and we did have to pay it.
Yeah, but I think even the sewer commission probably, they would want an appropriation for the cost of the project. I mean, I don't know, if it's, so you're gonna have to, but it's gonna be not one piece of equipment, it has to be engineered into the system, and then it has to be integrated with your present plant operations, right?
Yes, I mean, all that work is included in the cost.
In the
Yeah,
cost, but
delivery,
it's not
the-
included, but that exceeds that cost. So the project, let's say the project's $450,000, and the belt press itself is $300,000, you're looking for them to guarantee the $300,000?
we're asking them to guarantee $350.
$350?
And the belt press, we're assuming with any extras is gonna come out to, it's $324.50. With the extras, we're figuring $350. On top of it, we have to put the pump house and some more wiring at the very, very, very highest, that would be another $40,000. But the commission can pay that, those the extra fees. So we're just looking to get you all to co-sign $350 for us.
I think they need an appropriation. I mean, I don't know, we could talk to Randy, but,
Well, talk to Randy and treasurer. Unless anybody has strong objection, we're not gonna make that decision tonight.
Well, with some process issues, but I mean, clearly it's something the town needs to do, and even though it's an independent commission,
Right.
we're all the town. I'm personally not to interfere with the commission's business, but Kent has become known as the place to go to dump your sewage because nobody's monitoring, you just go, and maybe that's changed in the last year or so.
It has changed, no, we have eliminated all grease going into the plant.
Is it monitored 24 hours?
There's cameras on it, so we do monitor it. Stuff is gonna happen, I know, it's a real sticky wicket, I agree with you on
Is the
that.
gate locked at night?
Yeah, it gets locked when either Lyle or
Last man
Jesse
unlocks
leaves,
it,
yeah. And it's
there-
locked on the weekends.
And there were cameras there, are there still
Mhm.
operating cameras
Yeah.
on site?
And Lyle does go through and monitors them on Mondays from what happened, either week or at night
Is
and
it
stuff.
a quality camera so you can identify who is
Oh, yeah,
accessing?
oh, no, you can definitely see who the hauler is, for sure.
Do they have keys? So if they come in?
somebody
The
used,
haulers.
one or two used to, I don't think they have keys anymore, to be honest with you. I think we eliminated that process because it was just, you know, it was getting abused.
Yeah, because the word on the street was go to Kent, just dump whatever you got there.
No, I
Pay
know.
your minimum fee and you're out.
What streets do you walk on?
Just talking about airplanes.
Well, that may be
Trust me,
because
it's
they're
a
not
little-
charging enough.
But I mean, clearly I support the proposal, whatever system they go with and whatever amount of money they need, but there's a process, I don't know when it's gonna be authorized.
I mean, we still obviously have to apply for it and get all that paperwork in order, but just to know that, you know, the town would co-sign that part of the loan, because, you know, the town has obviously an A plus rating, which would be
Well,
helpful.
barring any unknown circumstances, I think we're in favor of.
Well, the only question I would have is, not to get into your business, but your capital reserve of $700,000, how quickly do you replenish that? I mean, if you took $500,000, how quickly do you recoup $500,000?
Oh, years.
Okay, so with that, my only question, that's fine, my only question is, what else can we anticipate coming down the pipe?
Well,
with
to be honest
these-
with you, I agree.
Because I'm sure
But
you've got other
at the
issues.
present moment, to try and, you know, we thought we could pick up some new users. We did a map of seeing who's on in town, and to be honest with you, I think there's maybe 17 people that within the old, what I call the old fire district, that are not on the sewer line. But with one, the anticipation, I mean, we took a big hit financially from the Kent going off the line. And then we are trying to work out something possibly with Club Getaway coming on the line, which would be another source of income for the commission, which would be great. So
that
between
was
those two,
A $30,000 hit from the Kent, wasn't it? Something like that?
yeah. So losing that for a couple of years in a row has taken its toll. And then we had problems with the plant with all the, you know, the septic lagoons and the basins and all the stuff,
And then the
just
flooding with the ice.
the
dams.
flooding with the ice and the, you know, we were hauling stuff away, so I mean, that depleted, I mean, we went through probably $200,000 2 years ago at the drop, like instantly, because of all the problems that we had to deal with down at the plant.
Well, I guess that's my concern. I don't see these machines as we were seeing all equipment in town not getting cheaper.
No, I know.
And, I don't know, I guess I would like to have some sort of perspective as to where we are in 5 years. This thing's got a lifespan, you say, of 30 years, but you've gotta have equipment in there that's about 5 years out. And especially when we're talking about a $2 million renovation, so anticipating you not bringing funds in, I just think, it would be, I think, a nice practice maybe to think down the road as to
Oh, I
what
totally
and
agree.
where and how
No,
this
I completely
$700,000
agree with you
is
on
gonna
that.
stand up or not.
Yeah.
Because you'll debt yourself up at some point.
The engineer has worked on a
Yeah,
capital
he
plan.
has a capital
They
plan
have
that- And to be honest with you, if we did totally everything on Bart's recommendations that is in dire need, I mean, we're looking at probably $750,000, of which the belt press is one. So I just personally, it costs us about $300,000 a year to operate the
Mhm.
plant. So I just don't really wanna wipe out, you know, a whole year's worth of income to go just pay for it. I mean, we could, but I just don't think that's a really wise idea, which would leave like $250 in the account or $300 in the account.
I
So
get it.
I just would rather, if we could borrow the money, I just think that would be just a more logical way to go.
Okay.
So let me, I'll look into the logistics of town co-signing, whether Jeff's correct or not, the 12th treasurer. And,
Makes sense,
and
logically.
report at our next
Okay.
meeting.
Great.
I
Thank
think
you.
in principle, I think we're in favor.
Yeah, no, I mean, I personally, I can see why you wouldn't be in favor of it, but there's just details to work out,
Yeah,
so, thank you.
thank you. Okay, onward. We got a letter in April from Kent Village Housing for the Elderly for a look at their tax assessment, and we've been asked to address this in executive session. Tegan is here representing them. Are you alone, Tegan? Or you-
No.
Do you still want said meeting in executive session, or you?
No.
No? Well, why don't you come on up here and join us?
Oh, no,
Okay.
At least you, if you want to bring reinforcements, come on up.
Thank you guys, I'm gonna go, okay?
Thank you for coming,
Jeff,
Jeff.
good to see you
again.
They're making me take your collar.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay, so we got your letter, as you well know, and we've discussed it at some length previously, myself, town attorney, and assessor, and then earlier this afternoon, assessor, town attorney, and board of selectmen. And we have what we'd like to make as an offer to you. It's primarily on the last page, which will be the part you'll be the most interested in. Don't have to make a decision, we don't expect you to make a decision on it right now, but that's.
Is there an executive summary of what it says?
Tegan's got it there in front of her, she can.
It's fairly well summarized there, but it's a 10-year graduated abatement program.
Yeah, let me step in by just simply saying, I think what we looked hard and said we understood the predicament that you're in. You came out of a 40-year program, and now you're out on your own. Given that, the assessor's case is, the assessor does their work and just says, this is the assessment. So that's her job, and we respect that. On our side of the bill, we had to look and say, okay, well, what's a comparable? And we have in the past worked with Kent Affordable Housing, and we've given them, mostly on the construction side, this is a new animal, but on the construction side, given them a graduated program. Based on that philosophy, that's what we thought we would start with. Because it's not a new construction, we decided to sort of alter it a little bit, but we're sensitive to the fact that there's a need on your end. That said, it's clear that at some point that day of reckoning's gonna come, whereby full taxation is definitely gonna be upon you. Again, this is not for, the barn is separate, that is apparently
Does not qualify.
not qualified. The other units that qualify
24 units.
put into that program. So that's sort of the thought process.
So I guess the long and the short of it is that that's a proposal for you guys to consider.
Okay. All right.
Don't want to review with your board?
Yes, I have
Makes
to do
sense.
that. Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you very much, and we'll be back in touch.
Any questions, just call Bruce.
Okay?
Thanks, guys.
Dan,
We have an agenda
G-A-N-T-T, Dan.
for the upcoming
T-T. Yeah, thank you.
May 17, 2019 town meeting. Copy?
I do.
It is, for the most parts, probably entirely, it is, as always appears, on this agenda. It is worth noting that we did have a few other things on the agenda that we decided to hold off and wait and schedule a separate town meeting maybe in June, basically to deal with 3 ordinance changes, so just not ready for that yet, so.
Yeah, this is probably a good time to throw out, I told you I will be out of the state for the entire month of June. So we may look at a special meeting at the end of May, if we can get everything positioned in time.
Okay.
So what do we need to do with this?
Move to, yes,
Barbara include the changing
Yes.
cap?
bridges.
And the bridge numbers,
17
yes.
point, very last thing, top of the second page, yes.
Item 6.
Yep. I would move to approve the agenda submitted for the May 17, 2019 town meeting. Shown.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, we need the science. This is in business. Okay, next on the list is streetscape. Had a good meeting the other day. I think the next order of business, whether it be before or after the referendum on the 16th, is we need to create a committee and create a charge for that committee and get moving. And the only reason I say that, not because it's desperate that we get this work done, but I think we're approaching danger area for possibly losing one or both of the grants that we have in place. I still don't know on the $400,000 one what its situation is. We haven't been told, but the $500,000 one does expire in December of 2019. So we gotta get moving, perhaps not with shovels actually in the ground, but with some specifics. If we don't do it now, I think we should perhaps have a special meeting to deal with it in the not too distant future. Thoughts?
So you're saying we need, you think the time is now to establish a new committee that will manage the project going forward,
Correct.
assuming it's authorized?
Correct. And the referendum on the 16th will or will not authorize the bond resolution. Then our understanding is that we'll have, it'll be about 6 months for the plan to be finalized, but they have told us that they will need, about halfway through, they will need some specifics as to materials and what we want streets to be covered and so forth. We'll need that about halfway through. And that will be the job of a committee or of us if we so desire.
So if, let's just make it up, this whole group we just appoint right now is the streetscape committee,
Right.
and the resolution fails, is it our position that we're still going to proceed with a streetscape? Or, you know, how is that, what's your position on that?
I would guess that would mean that I'm just shooting from the hip here, I don't know, that we could proceed with the grant money. That doesn't involve taxpayer funding. And I don't know that to be, don't quote me on that, Lynn, because I'm really not sure if that's the case.
Yeah, I've never been very clear as to how much skin we have to have in the game with respect to,
We don't have to have any skin in the game.
so we could, but that's not my understanding.
Yeah, that wasn't my understanding from our past discussions.
Right, that we actually had to have funds.
Now, I know we have 100,000 already committed, but we need an answer to those two questions.
Okay, which two questions?
Is there a condition of expiration of both of the grants, or individually each of the grants? If there's an expiration date, can they be
I know on
renewed?
one, I don't know on the other.
Okay, and what town participation is a minimum mandate in order to exercise the grant?
Yeah.
And one has to be total new construction to qualify, doesn't it?
I believe so. Yes. I believe we found that to be the case with the $500,000
But it doesn't specify how much. I mean, you could do new construction on small amounts,
I thought it did specify the entire project.
from one end to the other.
Oh, no, it doesn't specify that, because that's,
Well, the grant, if I recall, and I don't have it in my records, but it did specifically say type of material,
Yeah.
trees, lamps. So I think to Jeff's point, we need to know if indeed they're going to hold true and fast to that. I think if I remember in John's presentation, he was saying there was some flexibility there. They didn't have to do street lamps, or they didn't have to do certain things.
What is considered new construction? Is that to rip up the existing sidewalk and put down a new one? Is that new construction?
I would believe so, yes.
It's not like a
Not a
newly
new, not a
developed?
new layer of asphalt, for example.
Right, okay, but it's, but.
That's what I was gonna ask too, what's
That
new
would be my
construction?
belief, I believe.
And if, suppose we did new construction on part of the street, does that qualify if we don't do new construction on the rest of the project? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of gray area there that we could end up going forward and find that we don't qualify for the conditions of the grant.
My belief, and again, I'll make a note, my belief would be that the $500,000 requires new construction, the $400,000 does not. So, is what you're saying, could we do
Okay, so-
$500,000 of new and 400 of repairs? I would assume so. Don't know that to be the absolute truth, but I would assume that to be the case.
Well, I think the real question is, when you apply for a grant and you specify exactly what you're going to do, and it is approved, do we have to follow the letter of that grant?
Usually not.
Okay, so to Jeff's point, if we can get as best as we can to understand that, that would be helpful. Because the impact is such that, I mean, we're only pushing the streetscape committee, new committee, if you will, to get a jump on for the use of those two grants.
Correct.
So, the way I see it is, if that grant is tied to doing the plan that was put forward by the subcommittee, and that's what we have to do, and that gets voted down, there's no reason to even have a committee, because we're only gonna have $400,000 and $100,000 from capital.
So you're saying at that point, Rick could manage it as a repair
We
structure.
can manage it.
Or start a different committee. I mean,
Well, I still don't think it would be a bad idea to get a committee created. If it turns out to be nothing for them to do because of funding issues or what have you, then we'll disband the committee.
well, the only thing I don't like is the tone it sets from this board, that there's this assumption that it's going to go forward. I think that we respect the voter.
Oh,
If they tell us what to do, then we do it. If they tell us not to do it, then there's no reason
No,
to appoint a committee.
I agree with you too, that there shouldn't be an assumption that it's gonna be one way or the other.
So I would go with your idea of doing a special meeting. If we have to do it quickly and they say, let's do it, let's have a special meeting. It won't take very long to,
In May before.
right after the vote, right before you leave.
Okay, so we'll wait till the referendum results.
And I'll have this result before you, by the end of the week. Okay. Old business, health insurance, just an update. As I stated at the town meeting, we are in hopes that we can reduce the budget that was presented to the town last Friday by a fairly substantial amount by switching health plans. We're presently with Aetna, if you recall, we had this very same discussion last year at this time and switched to a lesser version of the plan that we had at the time from Aetna. Saved us some money last year, and the result was that Aetna hit us with a 25% increase. So we, primarily Joyce here in this office, along with people from Sharon and Salisbury who comprise the group that we're presently in, have been doing quite a lot of work along with our broker, and have come up with what we think is a good plan through Anthem, which would save us, right now it looks like approximately $33,000.
What is UHC, is that the state?
United Health.
United Healthcare, that's another one that we found not to be as good and more costly.
In the state plan, whatever.
The state plan is not even in the discussion. The state plan is where all the teachers in the region went. This is Blue Cross Blue Shield under the flagship of Anthem, something that I was a part of for most of my teaching career until we went to Aetna. It would show it, rather than the 25% cost that Aetna is showing, it would show an increase of 7.5% increase. The employees have looked it over, found it to be favorable. We're still working with the unionized highway crew.
As to whether this meets the equivalency
Correct.
test or whatever the language
I
was.
met today with the head, not with them, but their representative union guy, and he thought it looked good, but he had to meet with them one more time. So I told him, ideally, it would be nice to have something in place that we could present to the townspeople by the 17th, and he said he would try to accomplish. He couldn't guarantee it, but he would try to accomplish that. Joyce, don't mean to put you on the spot, but you're our insurance expert. Anything that I left out that's worth mentioning?
Yes, there's a health insurance meeting Friday at 10 a.m.
I did not know that.
I emailed you.
I did not get that.
You did in between meetings.
Oh, I didn't check my email.
No, you have not, that's why I'm telling you.
Okay, health insurance meeting when?
Friday at 10 o'clock.
Friday at 10, okay. Thank you. There's a
Well,
health
this,
insurance meeting Friday at
choice,
10.
this is good work. I mean, we're getting hammered by Aetna, and this may not ultimately be the optimum solution, but it looks like good stuff.
Yeah.
And as long as it's within reasonable distance of meeting the union's equivalency test, and, you know, if we can convert the whole town, including the road crew, that'd be great.
That seems to be.
And just put us in a bigger pool.
This keeps us, we're presently in a pool, the remaining pool after all the teachers left, of 50, which are the non-teaching employees of Sharon, Salisbury, and Kent. Right now, that pool is in danger of dissolving. If, for example, we chose not to go in, the pool would fall apart because we'd be below 50.
So is this,
They need us. This is assuming a pool of 50.
and that, so are we assuming that Sharon and Salisbury are in on this?
I believe they have made the decision.
They've
They are.
committed.
Yes, and they need us.
So they won't fall out if we don't join.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. They
Yeah,
said
we
that.
won't, they need us because they need to make the
us.
50.
They need us, yeah.
And they have gone for this plan that you've highlighted.
No,
No,
they
they're-
have a different plan.
they're
They're going
but
with the
still
same
under-
company.
Same company.
Just a
different
different
So
plan.
it still qualifies, so they have a
Yeah.
different plan. yeah.
Correct.
Yep.
And what plan is that? Why,
Something that's comparable to what they have. I
They
don't
have-
believe they don't have a high deductible plan. We do. So we're matching our existing plan. They're matching their existing plan.
Are both
But that
under,
keep-
both under the same company.
okay. It's still
Even though they're different plans, it still falls within the group.
Correct.
Okay. So what do we need to do about this?
At present, nothing. Just wanted to keep you updated.
Good work.
With my voice. Okay, we've talked at some length about the Park and Rec Director's job description, and we do have in your package a notification from the Park and Rec Commission saying that they made a motion to reaffirm the Park and Recreation Director's job description without the responsibilities of the Monday, Wednesday elderly nutrition program. As we've stated, our hope is that that will somehow be able to be worked out and taken over by the 10-hour-a-week addition to the Social Services Department, which that's pending budget approval, so we shall see. No action needed there either, just informing. Okay, the last order of business before the ending stuff. We've had before us a proposal from the present building inspector, Joe Manley, who has sent us a letter and met with us during our this too. I have a copy of this. This was put together by the treasurer. A letter in which he says, I want to inform you that I'd like to continue serving as the Kent building official, would like to negotiate the next 4-year contract, and he put forth 2 options. This was the letter that we were given back in January. One was to raise the permit fees to $30 for the first 1,000 of value, $8 for additional 1,000, and he would receive 85% of those fees. The other is option 2, which raises the permit fees to $30 for the first 1,000 and $10 for the additional 1,000, and he receives 75% of those fees. He hopes we'll consider one of those options. Now, since that time, the treasurer has put together a very interesting spreadsheet that you have before you, and we explain how it's set up. It's quite informative. The first column going across shows the information from the building department for fiscal years 16, 17, and 18. The gross receipts, how much the building inspector got during those years at 74%, which is what Bill Jenks got, and 26% town share, with the fee as it is now, $20 for the first 1,000, $6 after that. You can see that, you know, did quite well those 3 years. Using those same figures of gross receipts, option number 1 is the second band across, the first gray band, and that would show what the building inspector would make if we went with option 1. 75% of he collects, town gets 25%, fees are raised to 30 and 10. So focus on that column headed building inspector share, pretty hefty. And option 2, same information, building inspector share at 85%, fees raised to 30 and 8, and you can see the numbers there as well. So,
What is the variation on the gross receipts? I thought this was a straight comparison. I mean, under option 1, why do the gross receipts change?
Your permit fees changing?
yes.
Okay, under
Yeah,
option
permit-
1, the gross receipts for, let's just take one, fiscal year 16 is 247 plus.
No, wait, on option
Oh,
one,
I see,
yes.
so it's.
It's 124,391
I see, and it
for
goes 30,
fiscal
drops down to
16.
8, yeah, okay.
And then with the increase in fees, it goes up to 247,371 in option 1.
Okay, I got it, it was
And
misreading.
75% of that would put 185,000 in the building inspector's pocket.
The question, we discussed this before, and don't we have to go to town meeting to change the fees?
We do,
Okay.
we do. So it's been suggested that we perhaps might want to put this out, put an RFP out to see what we get, interest in this job, perhaps in salary-based rather than fee-based. I'm told that more towns use that method rather than fee-based pay throughout the state of Connecticut. I mean, this
That's
is,
interesting.
for example, you know, we can get one heck of a full-time employee for $185,000. We're getting, in the budget that we've got before us now, we're getting a new highway department employee for $125,000 all in. This fiscal year 16 in option 1 puts $185,000 in the building inspectors. I imagine some people in this room might be interested in that position.
Bruce, can I ask, why didn't you know this before? I knew it. Come on, Bruce. You didn't?
I knew it was a lot, but he knows that kind of numbers.
Come on. I knew it.
Well,
Well, at least
I-
you did your research.
Better late than never.
But employees also bear costs, you know, social
Yeah,
security
pay
costs.
insurance.
They bear, you know, health costs and things like that too.
Full-time employees do,
Yes.
yes. Yep.
He works as a part-time.
He's very part-time,
Oh, really?
very part-time.
180 grand?
Yeah,
I'm in.
would you like that? I figured
I'm in.
you might be interested.
There
qualifications though.
There
Not
are-
anybody,
Oh,
not just anybody
absolutely.
can be a
Oh,
building
yeah,
official.
there's a lot
That's
of
true of a
qualifications.
lot of jobs in the town hall, and you know that.
No, but there are some very strict qualifications for this job, we know that to be true. Everyone knows that.
Well, this is rather eye-opening. I
It
would
is.
say we seriously evaluate looking for a full-time employee.
Well, we don't need a full-time employee, you don't need a
Okay,
full-time building.
whatever, even if it was full-time, you know, we're talking about substantial salary.
I mean,
You
there's a-
also could make him liable for his own clerk, which used to be with
Well,
Bill used to pay
that
his
used to
clerk.
be-
For example, in Cornwall, the building inspector
Bill used to do it.
pays all of his own expenses. He pays his clerk, he has an office, his office isn't even in the town hall, it's in Northeast Building Supply. He pays all of his own expenses. That's a possibility as well with this kind of. And with potentially a couple of big jobs coming up, the High Watch project and the Birch Hill project, this number could be pretty high in the coming year, based on fees.
Well, you could lower the fees and let the taxpayer take the break.
Yeah, increasing the fees puts it on the back of the taxpayers.
Well, all these fees, as you've heard me before, they put on the taxpayer. I mean, most of the contractors that are paying them are local, most, not all.
Most, yeah.
But, and then most of the people doing it are people like yourself putting on a deck, or putting in a window, or, and to me, that, it's a little bothersome. Especially when you, I mean, I knew these were high, the options are even higher.
Yeah,
I knew the previous individual was making this, and he's making it in a couple of other towns too. Really, yeah. Which, hey, that's just the way it works, that's okay, but I think now we're evaluating it, it's a time to really think about fees themselves, and as Debbie suggested, which was the practice before, the contracted building officials were a complete package. They had their own secretarial staff, they had, I don't know how that got shifted or where, but.
That got shifted when he wanted to raise the fees, and the deal was if we raised the fees, we would pick up the clerk.
Got it.
But the fees never really got raised.
but the fees
Yes, they
didn't-
did. Well, we didn't,
Oh,
that's
they
what,
did?
that's why
Oh,
we
that
picked
long
up the
ago.
clerk.
Wow.
Yeah,
How long ago?
Oh, a long time ago.
Because he asked to raise the fees
not that long.
more than 10 years ago.
Yeah, because you remember the time when he
He
did.
tried to
it was
raise
just
the
in
fees
there.
when Vince was a selectman, and that was when I was a selectman.
It was more than a decade ago.
And so that's 12 years ago.
When we put together the interim contract that he's operating under now, did we not raise his percentage to 90%?
His percentage now is 90 with the existing fees, with the 20,
Right.
the 20 and 6. That was done in some haste with the
Right, I remember.
rather abrupt retirement of the building inspector.
Can I ask how close you're getting to the 35,000 that's budgeted for the building department, for the income for the town?
I don't know.
Because we haven't hit that in the last couple of years.
Say that again, Dennis.
35,000 is the budget amount for the
Right,
town.
income, right.
We haven't hit that for the last couple of years, so.
No, it's been 31, 30, and 34.
And this year at 90%, we're,
Yeah.
That's a good point, that's good.
Well, the good news is you have the authority,
That's the authority to hire, that's all.
so I think if you can come to us with some sort of idea, figuring out what we wanna do. I'm not inclined to raise, let me back up, I think the service that we've had from Joe is, at least the limited experience I've had, has been very good. This isn't really a person issue, this is a position issue and a salary issue vis-a-vis that.
I do have just a clarification too. Do they take on their own responsibility though if they're complex, things that need engineering? Do they take on the responsibility of paying for those costs? Which I would think
Like
that
when
would-
you have to go out and get a special appraisal done, that sort of thing in your office, you know, that kind of thing, in the building department.
Sometimes, like if it's a complicated
Yeah.
building, they may have to go to an engineer to have them review the plans to make sure that the the I-beam that's right. I don't know if they always know all of those things. Do they have to?
No,
pay
my
for the-
understanding is it's the other way around. The person presenting has to have an architect, an engineer, and all of
Okay,
that has to be
okay.
approved.
Just wanted to make
And
sure.
so they're the ones backing up
So
that.
there is no additional costs there that are beyond?
She's right,
Well,
there,
they
there
will
can
have-
be,
I'm sorry?
there can be additional costs, particularly with large projects.
On the actual building official.
If they're paid by
They-
the fees?
They can hire a special inspector.
Yeah, I
To
think
do
Patty's
what
asking,
she's talking
who
about.
pays that? Do they pay that?
Well, they would have to independently pay that because we don't have a budget line for it.
That's what, so some of those fees may go for that special,
Yeah, but how many times does that happen?
well, with your Kent School and your High Watch, it's probably, I'm just to open your mind to maybe another reason,
Yep.
that's all. I don't know enough about it, I don't wanna pretend to know enough about it. I think there may be something else there too, on the bigger projects, even though there may be large fees.
Well, and they
there may
also have
be
to carry
additional
insurance.
costs.
I mean, there are additional,
I think
certainly
there's a-
expenditures to it.
Yeah, so they're not pocketing.
You just need to make sure you cover that special, who pays that special inspector fee? special
Well, it would be
inspections.
good, I think the point's well taken, the multiple points, which is,
There may
what are
be
the
other-
additional costs? Because we're looking at the raw cost of, at least
Except there may
in
be
past,
costs.
$90,000, $95,000, $97,000. I think what we need to know is what are the raw costs, beyond the raw costs, what are the actual costs with respect to backup? And sometimes it's going to be a special engineer, sometimes it's going to be, it's gonna be insurance, liability.
And how do you cover it when he's not there? Vacations.
Mhm.
I think that's done with other building inspectors like
Mm.
Bill Jenks or.
You need to make sure you've got that covered.
Yep.
It was my understanding last month that there's a time limit on this due to the statute. You have to have a building inspector by, is that date
I don't
limited?
recall hearing that.
No, you guys signed a contract where it expires June 30th.
June 30th.
That's the timeline.
Okay,
That's the
Which is-
timeline.
so June 30th, okay.
Does the contract have to be 4 years?
Yes, according to state
That's
statute.
by
the
statute,
statute.
yes, believe it or not, that is in the statute.
It doesn't have to be a contract, it has to be a 4-year appointment. That's what the state statute says.
Okay,
And
it's
that's
gonna
what
be,
you,
right.
Because obviously, if you have a salaried employee, you're not getting a contract.
Right, it's an appointment of, okay.
4 years, right. All right, so I think the first thing I would do is try to set up a meeting with Joe and get some answers to some of these questions that have been raised here today.
And, guess my thinking would be show them these numbers.
I will.
And say, for $160,000, if you, when I divide 494 by 3, I get like 165,000, but if you even consider a basic tax and some insurance, I think it's still a pretty good income for a part-time job.
Very part-time job, because it's, is it
3 hours a week in the office.
3 or
But
4?
that doesn't, you gotta think there's time with inspection.
Inspection, 3 hours in the building, yes. Anything else you want me to put down here? I've got additional costs like engineers, insurance liability, a breakdown of the salary and hours per week.
Well, I think, in light of the time frame that we're dealing with, I think you need to flesh out pretty quickly whether this is something that's gonna be palatable to him or not.
Right.
Even seeing the numbers, I'm sure he already knows those numbers. And so, if that's the case and we're going to pivot, we better pivot quickly.
Yeah. I'll talk to him tomorrow. Get back to you ASAP. All right, last one under old business is the addition. Jeff asked to have some things added for the policy manual considerations.
Yeah, here's the situation. We've discussed a lot of items that are the subject of the policy manual, and we've not really made a whole lot of progress. There is one item that the insurance opt-out provision. We've kind of amended that, discussed it, I think we've agreed it, but for some reason it never got authorized to be put in the policy manual.
It did, at the last meeting.
It did.
Got voted upon.
You weren't here.
Oh,
I think
I
that was
wrote a
one
brief
issue.
about
That-
Okay.
that definitely did.
all right, so.
It didn't initially, you're right, but it did.
Okay, there was some delay. Okay, it's done. We crossed that one out. There's some other things we discussed, and I think we can just identify them as a list for further discussion. And in each of these, I've probably spent a little bit of time coming up with some general parameters to present to you guys, but nothing has become too concrete, and then, of course, we get distracted with budgets, so there's still kind of back burner stuff. But just to go over them, we talked about a comp time policy. And we talked about an education policy. That kind of has gone back and forth over the years. Remember, for a while, you were increasing people's hourly rate by $1 if they got certain education. And then I think that's gone now, but we need to come up with some stated policy on our support for education. You know, there's mandatory training, certification training, there's good-to-know training that enhances their job ability. It just needs to kind of be summarized in a policy. And the last one is, we've talked about hiring policy in terms of like notification of openings and appointments. I think we've made some progress on that. We came up with a method to at least notify when appointments are coming open in your newsletter. What I would like to do is to see that, again, summarized in the policy manual so it's clear. The little drips and drabs that come out of our meetings doesn't come up with really a concise, coherent policy. So unless there's other items to add, what I would propose to do is to continue with my backroom work and come up with some recommendations for you guys to shoot down and slap me in the face about, and then move on.
I would say absolutely.
All right, that's really all I wanted to do, is to bring this back to the surface, that they haven't been forgotten.
Thank you for doing it, thank you for not letting it be forgotten. Okay, very quickly through the rest, my report is here if anybody's interested. Nothing out of the ordinary. You have a copy, you all have a copy in your packets. There's one here. Do you guys have anything you want to report?
I just want to ask, so you got the four-way stop sign installed on South Kent Road?
Yes, that took some doing by the state. They finally got it done.
Is that just a permitting issue?
No, they had to do a traffic study, which they did, and told me so last January, and then they couldn't do it then until it got warmer because it involved line painting, and they couldn't do line painting in cold weather, so they were waiting until the weather warmed up so that they could paint the roads. So got moved to the top of the list per my request and got done as soon as roads could be painted, and it's gotten a lot of thank yous for doing it. A few complaints, mainly from people that just find it hard to get used to after driving the road their whole lives and just whiz on through it. We've done a lot of police enforcement. Andrew's pulled over many people. Most of them are people who have lived down that road forever and just fly right through it. Lynn, how about you? You go there every day, multiple times.
I was standing there taking the picture that I put in the paper, and
Yeah.
somebody flew through the stop sign as I'm trying to take the picture.
Yeah.
So, but I have seen, I saw a trooper there at least one morning.
And I do have a request in to put in larger stop signs. I don't think I'll get it, but I think it's worth a try.
Isn't there standard stop sign
I didn't know
size?
there was a size.
No, there are multiple sizes, right?
Well, we want the big one.
Not the giant ones, but bigger than the ones that are there. At least initially, if they wanna swap them out later, I don't care until people get used to it.
Is Andrew doing like soft enforcement?
Yeah, I
for
mean,
miles?
are people getting tickets, or?
He has not been ticketing, but he stopped a lot of people and said, you know, you just went through that sign. All plead innocence.
And just grew into this, we still have two speed signs that are sitting somewhere in a garage. Is there any way we can get those up? Anywhere, wherever you choose, wherever you choose, but I thought we were going to get a permit from the state to put them 341 or 37 or somewhere.
We did get a couple of permits, but one was, I think, mistyped or something, instead of being here in town, it was up
In Como.
above 7 horse up there. I didn't see the point in putting it up there,
Yeah, we wanted it more like near where Jim Blackler used to.
where the
live.
speed changes come into town, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
The other one's up by.
And I just asked for a day. or a date in which these things will be up. And I would say also, because it has been effective, I think, on Elizabeth Street.
Is it?
It seems to me, I mean, certainly going one way, the other way they fly out of there, but at least one way it seems that it, you know, people are paying attention to it. I would just hope that it seems silly to me, especially if we've got the trooper going around ticketing people, pulling people over for speed, that we're not trying to deal with it ourselves on some summit. So where are we again? May? Can we get it up by the end of June?
The program's on by
Is that a yes?
The program is
As long as the
still an issue?
program, because I can't program what the sign does without the computer program being correct, so. I wasn't too worried about it on our two roads, because they flash whenever they want, but when we put on the state road, we have to go by the regulations.
And that requires some more program tweaking,
Mhm.
but we can get that done.
I can put it on our roads.
Well, if that's the case,
Yeah.
put them up. I just think
I'd
that we
say
could.
put them up on Harbor Road.
Can we at least have what the speed limit is supposed to be? I
The
mean,
sign is right there with it.
I've driven by the one on Elizabeth Street and I've looked and
You
looked.
pass the speed limit sign before you got to it.
Yeah.
It's not on the same
And
post.
I had the same thing up on
On
Carter
state
Road.
roads, it's supposed to be
I
on the
was
same
like,
post.
the only the sign I
No.
saw up on Carter Road was 30 miles an hour. Is that the speed limit on Carter Road?
Or 35, I forget what it was up
I
there.
think it's 35.
It's 15 going into the school.
So they don't have to be on the same post on the state
15
roads,
minutes.
as I was told?
Really hard to do 15.
But
15
nearby.
miles.
Within the vicinity.
Because you have to come up, you're doing 18, you have to actually get off the gas and put your brake on to get to 15.
It's tough on Carter Road coming down when the thing starts flashing
Yeah,
at
you
you.
can't.
Yeah,
It's hard to meet the speed limit. It really is.
Hard to stop at stop signs, isn't it? Clearly.
No, I'm training
I'm
myself.
generous. Well, I would appreciate
Has
if we
there
could
been
get
some-
them up somewhere and out of the garage, because we pay for them.
I wonder what was the first date that we discussed these signs?
but we discussed them
It was
long,
right up
long
there
before we
with-
actually bought them.
With electric car stations.
Okay.
Lynn, I'm just curious, has there been any talk at South Kent School about the four-way stop, positive or negative?
I
Staff?
I heard from Gonzo Garcia that he was thrilled.
Okay, good.
It was,
Anyone
the
come
day
home
they
fast?
went up, there was an email that went out with the photo saying, they're here.
Okay, treasurer's not here, tax refunds then?
I've got a half a dozen
Oh, I'm
of them.
sorry, treasurer has a report. Do we
I'll
have-
just give these to you. I've got a half a dozen of them since I left. There you are.
You didn't, I left it on your desk, did you not go to your desk?
Any meetings? No, I did not.
Kristen sent me,
I have it.
yeah.
Another copy. Where are we?
Great.
Yeah.
It's like it's
No
snowed.
doubt.
But it probably blossoms.
Tax refunds. We looked at it?
I have not.
Are we still having refunds from the overpayments?
These are all overpayments for one thing. They're not, there's only one over $1,000. Yeah, there should be two of each.
Yeah.
Why are there two of each?
Because one goes in the treasurer's report and the other one goes back to the homeowner. That's why they're both signed.
Okay,
Is there a motion, Jeff?
yes.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Motion to adjourn?
Before you do that, I have a submission for you, before you adjourn. So,
Were you here during public communication?
I came in a few minutes late. So I'd like just to, this was from 2 meetings ago. I proposed some ideas around just encouraging participation in town meetings. Last meeting, you actually charged me to look into it. And so I have done that, and these are the results of the report. So,
Copy for each?
yeah, so
Thank you.
basically, I only have one copy there.
Oh, sure.
And what is appended to that as well is an example of a report that is sent out and it's explained in that report. The most critical element, I think, is two things. Number one is notification of meetings. Again, you know, anachronistically, it still has to be done. Think of, you know, the warnings posted outside of the town hall, outside of the clerk's office. That's what the regulation states, and that's what I confirmed in regulation. It states that. Second issue was around, does there need to be a meeting in January and then further a budget meeting in May? Not at all. It's very clear from the state regulations, statutes, that only one meeting is required. And furthermore, I spoke with a legislative or attorney, or staff attorney at the Secretary of State's office in Hartford, and that's documented in this report, which he told me. And no, one meeting is required, that's all. So you don't need to have two. The January meeting is kind of superfluous. So that's all in that report. It's 10 pages, you have it all there.
I'll make copies and get everybody.
You can just email
Thank you.
it.
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter.
Sure.
I move we adjourn.
Okay, meeting adjourned.